Hey there, fellow seekers of success and truth. Welcome back to the channel where we dive deep into the most fascinating, controversial, and mind-blowing books that the powers that be didn't want you to read. Today, I've got something absolutely incredible for you. A story so shocking, so controversial, that it was literally banned from publication for over 70 years. We're talking about Napoleon Hill's Outwitting the Devil, The Secret to Freedom and Success. A book that was considered so dangerous, so threatening to the established order, that Hill's own family and friends begged him never to publish it. Now, before we jump into this wild ride, let me set the scene for you. Picture this. It's 1938, just 1 year after Napoleon Hill published his legendary masterpiece, Think and Grow Rich. You know, that book that sold over 100 million copies and changed millions of lives. Hill was at the peak of his career, riding high on success, when suddenly he sat down at his typewriter and began writing what would become the most controversial book in personal development history. But here's where it gets absolutely fascinating. Hill claimed he had an actual conversation with the devil himself. Now, whether you believe this was a real supernatural encounter or a brilliant metaphorical device doesn't matter, because what came out of this interview was pure psychological dynamite that would make your head spin. Let me tell you exactly why this book was so terrifying to the establishment that it had to be hidden away like some forbidden treasure. Hill's wife, Annie Lou, worked for the Presbyterian Church, and when she read the manuscript, she was absolutely horrified. She literally forbade her husband from publishing it, fearing it would destroy his reputation and bring the wrath of religious institutions down upon them. And she wasn't wrong. This book doesn't just challenge conventional thinking, it obliterates it. The timeline of this book's suppression is absolutely mind-blowing. Written in 1938, it remained locked away even after Hill's death in 1970. His wife, Annie Lou, kept it buried until her own death in 1984. Then it passed to Dr. Charles Johnson of the Napoleon Hill Foundation, but even he couldn't publish it because his wife, Frankie, shared Annie Lou's fears. It wasn't until both women had passed away that the manuscript finally made its way to Sharon Lechter. Yes, the same Sharon Lechter who co-authored Rich Dad, Poor Dad with Robert Kiyosaki. Only then, in 2011, did this explosive content finally see the light of day. But why was everyone so terrified of this book? What could be so dangerous about a conversation between a success author and the devil? Well, buckle up, because we're about to find out. The book is structured as an interrogation. Think of it like the ultimate true crime interview, except instead of questioning a criminal, Hill is grilling the devil himself, forcing him to reveal his deepest, darkest secrets about how he controls and manipulates human beings. The devil, who insists on being called Your Majesty throughout the interview, makes a chilling claim right from the start. He controls 98% of all people on Earth. 98%. That means out of every 100 people you meet, only 2 are truly free from his influence. Now you might be wondering, how does he meet up with the devil in the first place? Here's where the story gets absolutely incredible. Hill tells us about a period in his life when he received death threats and was forced to hide out with relatives for over a year. He was paralyzed by fear, unable to complete his work, when suddenly he experienced what he called a spiritual breakthrough. He describes hearing a powerful inner voice, which he later identified as his other self, commanding him to stop being afraid and complete his mission. It was during this intense spiritual crisis that he claimed to have gained the power to communicate with and interrogate the devil. But here's what's truly fascinating. Hill leaves it up to the reader to decide whether this was a real supernatural encounter or a product of his imagination. He says, and I quote, "The devil I interviewed may have been real, just as he claimed to be, or he may have been the creation of my own imagination. Whichever he was, whether real or imaginary, is of little importance compared with the nature of the information conveyed through the interview." And boy, is that information explosive. The devil reveals his entire playbook, his most closely guarded secrets for keeping humanity in chains. His greatest weapon? Something he calls drifting. Now, this isn't just about being lazy or unfocused. Drifting is a state of mind where people live without definite purpose. allowing themselves to be influenced and controlled by circumstances outside their own thinking. The devil explains that drifters are his easiest targets because they've essentially handed over control of their minds. Listen to this chilling description of what a drifter looks like. They lack a major purpose in life. They're conspicuous by their lack of self-confidence. They never accomplish anything requiring thought and effort. They spend all they earn and more if they can get credit. They're ill-tempered and lacking control over their emotions. They have opinions on everything but accurate knowledge of nothing. They may be jack of all trades, but good at none. And here's the kicker. They make the same mistake over and over again, never learning from failure. Does this sound like anyone you know? Maybe even yourself sometimes? The devil boasts that these characteristics describe the vast majority of humanity, which is exactly how he maintains his stranglehold on the world. But it gets even more sinister. The devil reveals how he uses society's most trusted institutions, schools, churches, and even families, to create drifters. He explains how traditional education systems are designed to produce conformists rather than independent thinkers. Students are taught to memorize rather than to think, to follow rather than to lead. They're conditioned to fear criticism, to seek approval from authority figures, and to avoid taking risks. The devil is particularly proud of how he uses religious institutions. He plants the seeds of fear of punishment, fear of hell, fear of divine retribution, in children's minds while they're young and impressionable. Once these fears take root, they create a lifetime of mental slavery. People become so afraid of making the wrong choice that they make no meaningful choices at all, drifting through life in a state of paralyzed indecision. Now here's where it gets really controversial. The devil claims that both organized religion and traditional education work hand in hand to deliver people into his control. He says that instead of encouraging people to think for themselves, these institutions teach them to accept dogma without question, to follow rules blindly, and to fear the consequences of independent thought. But the most chilling revelation comes when the devil explains his concept of hypnotic rhythm. This is his ultimate weapon for making negative habits permanent. He explains it like this. When you repeat any thought or action over and over, it eventually becomes so ingrained that it operates automatically, without conscious thought. Once this rhythm is established, breaking the habit becomes nearly impossible because nature itself has taken over and made it permanent. Think about it. How many self-destructive patterns do you see people trapped in? Procrastination, negative thinking, self-doubt, fear of failure. The devil explains that these aren't just bad habits. They're deliberate traps that become stronger every time they're repeated, until eventually they control the person completely. Now you might be thinking, this is all pretty dark stuff. How do you actually outwit this devil? Well, here's where Hill reveals the 7 principles that can break you free from this mental prison. And these aren't just feel-good platitudes. These are battle-tested strategies for reclaiming control of your mind and your destiny. The first principle is definiteness of purpose. The devil admits that he cannot control anyone who has a clear, definite, major purpose in life. When you know exactly what you want and are committed to achieving it, you become resistant to his influence. You stop drifting and start directing your own life. The second principle is mastery over self. This means taking complete responsibility for your thoughts, emotions, and actions. No more blaming circumstances, other people, or bad luck. You recognize that you are the master of your own mind and destiny. The third principle is learning from adversity. Instead of being defeated by setbacks and failures, you use them as stepping stones to greater achievement. Every obstacle becomes a lesson. Every defeat becomes preparation for victory. The fourth principle is controlling environmental influence. This means carefully choosing who you associate with and what influences you allow into your mind. The devil reveals that he often works through negative people to spread his influence, so surrounding yourself with positive, success-minded individuals is crucial. The fifth principle is time. The devil explains that time is either your greatest ally or your worst enemy, depending on how you use it. Those who use time wisely to develop positive thought habits become unstoppable, while those who waste time allow negative patterns to become permanent. The sixth principle is harmony. This means aligning your thoughts, emotions, and actions toward your definite purpose. When all aspects of your being are working in harmony, you become a force of nature that nothing can stop. The seventh and final principle is caution. This doesn't mean being afraid to take action, but rather thinking through your plans carefully before you act. It's about being strategic rather than impulsive, making decisions based on reason rather than emotion. But here's what really blew my mind about this book. The devil actually admits that these principles work so well that anyone who applies them becomes completely immune to his control. He says, and I'm paraphrasing here, "I cannot control you because you have discovered your own mind and you have taken charge of it. You know that I exist only in the minds of people who have fears. You know that I control only the drifters who neglect to use their own minds." The psychological insights in this book are absolutely staggering. Hill essentially created a complete manual for understanding and overcoming the negative forces in your own mind. Whether you believe in a literal devil or see this as a metaphor for negative thinking, the practical wisdom is undeniable. One of the most powerful concepts is what Hill calls the other self, that voice of inner wisdom and strength that guides you toward your highest potential. The devil admits that this other self is his greatest enemy because it represents everything he opposes. Courage instead of fear, definiteness instead of drifting, faith instead of doubt, purpose instead of aimlessness. The book also reveals some shocking truths about how society is structured to create and maintain drifters. The devil boasts about how he influences politicians, educators, and religious leaders to create systems that discourage independent thinking. He explains how propaganda is used to manipulate public opinion, how fear is used to control behavior, and how conformity is rewarded while individuality is punished. But perhaps the most empowering aspect of this book is its message that you have the power to break free from any form of mental slavery. No matter how trapped you might feel, no matter how established your negative patterns might be, you can reclaim control of your mind and redirect your life towards success and fulfillment. The devil himself admits that his power is entirely dependent on people's ignorance of his methods. Once you understand how he operates, once you see through his tricks and schemes, he becomes powerless to control you. Knowledge truly is power, and this book provides the knowledge you need to become mentally, spiritually, and financially free. What makes this even more remarkable is that Hill wrote this in 1938 during the Great Depression. Yet his observations about human psychology and social control are more relevant today than ever. In our age of social media, constant information overload, and increasing social conformity, the dangers of mental drifting have only multiplied. The book also provides fascinating insights into the nature of fear itself. The devil explains that fear is nothing more than a state of mind, and like all states of mind, it can be controlled and directed. He reveals his 6 most effective fears: poverty, criticism, ill health, loss of love, old age, and death. But he also admits that anyone who faces these fears directly and refuses to be controlled by them becomes completely free from his influence. One of the most chilling passages in the book is when the devil explains how he uses people's own desires against them. He doesn't force anyone to do anything. Instead, he simply presents temptations and opportunities for self-destruction, then sits back and watches people destroy themselves. It's a masterclass in psychological manipulation that reveals how many of our problems are self-created. As we wrap up this incredible journey through one of the most controversial books ever written, I want you to ask yourself, are you a drifter or a non-drifter? Do you have a definite purpose driving your life, or are you just going through the motions? Are you in control of your thoughts and emotions, or are they controlling you? The beauty of this book is that it doesn't just identify the problems, it provides concrete solutions. It gives you a roadmap for taking control of your mental and emotional life, for breaking free from negative patterns, and for achieving the success and freedom you deserve. Remember, according to Hill's research, only 2% of people ever break free from the devil's control. But now that you know his secrets, now that you understand his methods, you have the knowledge and tools to join that elite 2%. The question is, will you use them? I hope this deep dive into outwitting the devil has opened your eyes to some powerful truths about success, failure, and the incredible power of your own mind. This is the kind of forbidden knowledge that can literally transform your life if you have the courage to apply it. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because we've got so many more fascinating, mind-blowing books to explore together. From ancient wisdom to modern breakthroughs, from suppressed texts to revolutionary ideas, we're going to uncover the secrets that can change your life forever. Until next time, keep thinking for yourself, keep questioning everything, and remember, the only limitations you have are the ones you accept in your own mind.